Hello and welcome to The Works. I'm your host, Daryl Brown. My guest today, Gretchen Kyles, Poetry in Motion. Here on The Works today, we will discuss a diversity of poems selected by our guest. She was given a list and has chosen 5. Later, Gretchen will perform an interpretive dance based on one of her selected poems. So we'll get going, Gretchen, let's start with your number 1 selection, The Lamb by William Blake. Tell us a little bit about this poem, and maybe you'll read a short section from it.
Thank you, Daryl. The Lamb by William Blake. Little lamb, who made thee? Dost thou know who made thee? Give thee life, and bid thee feed by the stream and o'er the mead. Give thee clothing of delight, softest clothing, woolly bright. Gave thee such a tender voice, making all the vales rejoice. Little lamb, who made thee? Dost thou know who made thee? Again, The Lamb is written by William Blake, and the means behind this particular poem is actually, it was a song. Originally, it was a song, and the original tune is actually lost at this day and time. But the intent was to bring to one's mind about who we are, who the Creator is. It speaks upon Jesus. In fact, the poem actually highlights the characteristics of Jesus, and it actually speaks about God. But once again, the intent behind this, or the attitude behind this, is one of innocence, and its main goal is really to bring to the forefront who we are, who our Creator are, and definitely speaking about God and Christ.
And one question I'd like to ask you is, why did this poem interest you?
Well, Daryl, this poem interests me simply because being a Christian, and I can identify, and just actually knowing that I am a child of God, and Christ is the ultimate Lamb, and God is the Creator. So just being a Christian just kind of drew me because I could pretty much relate to that frame of mind.
All right, thank you for that. Let's move on to number 2 now. And the title of number 2, Not Waving But Drowning by Stevie Smith. Again, I'm just going to ask you to read a small portion, and then maybe you could address the question afterwards. What's the message of that poem for you?
Not Waving But Drowning by Stevie Smith. Nobody heard him, the dead man, but still he lay moaning. I was much further out than you thought, and not waving but drowning. Poor chap, he always looked larky, and now he's dead. It must have been too cold for him. His heart gave way, they said. The message behind this is just simply that, not waving but drowning is basically someone that's crying out for help, and this help, this cry was not noticed. In fact, it was ignored. And if you would, upon your personal time, take a moment and read it, and, in its totality, then you would understand it went just a little bit further in regards to that sometimes there are those, like I said, that are calling out for help that we may see every day that are around us, and we don't necessarily recognize and see the call, or even if we see it, that we're not necessarily sensitive. And that's the message behind it. Just really recognizing, those that are around us, that are calling out, that are in need.
Right, thank you. So that's a very meaningful poem, which speaks to our kind of human nature. Let's move on to number 3. Holy Sonnet, number 10, Death Be Not Proud by John Donne. And again, I'm going to ask you just to read a little bit, or that one's not very long, so maybe you could read all of it. And then maybe you could tell us a little bit about the tone of that particular poem once you've Thank you.
Death, be not proud. Death, be not proud, though some have called thee mighty and dreadful, for thou art not so. For those whom thou thinkest thou doest overthrow, die not, poor death, nor yet canst thou kill me. From rest and sleep, which but the pictures be, much pleasure, then from thee much more must flow. And soonest our best men with thee do go. Rest of their bones and souls delivery, thou art slave to fate, chance, kings, and desperate men, and doest with poison, war, and sickness dwell. And poppy of charms can make us sleep as well. And better than thy stroke, why swellest thou then? One short sleep past, we wake eternally, and death shall be no more. Death, thou shalt die. I know you mentioned the tone, but if I could just get just a little bit more involved in regards to the message itself, and if just listening to the title, Death, Be Not Proud, just from a standpoint that when it comes to the unknown, that we're often fearful of that, and death is one of those unknown and something that we want to stay away from. But we've oftentimes heard people speak upon that when it comes to death, it's a form of sleep. And it is actually a form of sleep. And what the author is saying here, that after death, there is eternity. So death really cannot brag, can't be braggadocious or, proud, puffed up. Because in all actuality, it has no sting and it has no victory. So when I just connect with that as that, there are a couple of things that must happen. And one thing that is certain is indeed death will come to us all. But I can still be encouraged knowing that it's but a sleep and that I will spend eternity somewhere.
That poem appears to have a very deep significance for you. Let's move on to number 4. Healing Prayer from Beauty Way Chant. And this poem was written by an anonymous Navajo. So again, I'm going to ask you to read a portion of the poem. And again, maybe you could tell us, why this poem interested you.
Thank you. Healing Prayer from the Beauty Way Chant. Out of the east, beauty has come home. Out of the south, beauty has come home. Out of the west, beauty has come home. Out of the north, beauty has come home. Out of the highest heaven and the lowest land, beauty has come home. And I'll stop just there. Again, in your, private time, if you just want to go and look that up and read that in its entirety. But this particular prayer is more so along the form of a chant or a song that, for those of you that may know, when it comes to the Navajos, that they are really into, sacred acts and ceremonial situations here and rituals. And oftentimes, if one was sick, what they would actually do is perform some type of chant or, for you to better understand, maybe sing some type of song and dance. And what drew me to this particular scenario was that when we think about songs, although we can't use that as an alternative healing method, but nonetheless, and I don't know if you've ever experienced, but sometimes songs can be very soothing. And, those that might be down to sing a song can change their complete attitude here. And I've experienced that from a personal note, too, in terms of the power behind singing and how it can be uplifting.
Thank you. So now we've reached our final poem. And again, Gretchen, you're going to read a portion of this poem. And then this is the poem on which your interpretive dance will be based. And so we'll move on to that afterwards. All right? So thank you.
Okay, the poem that stood out probably the most or really touched me or drew me, which is Maya Angelou's Still I Rise. And I'll just read portions of it. Portion of this, as I do the interpretive dance, I'm going to do the very portions that I am going to read. And it says that you may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me in the very dirt, but still like dust I rise. You may shoot me with your words. You may cut me with your eyes, you may kill me with your hatefulness, but still like air I rise. Out of the hurts of history's shame, I rise. Up from the past that's rooted in pain, I rise. I'm a black ocean, leaping and wide, welling and swelling, I bear in the tide, leaving behind nights of terror and fear, I rise. Into daybreak that's wondrously clear, I rise, bringing the gifts that my ancestors gave. I am the dream and the hope of the slave. I rise, I rise, I rise.
Thank you so much for that, Gretchen. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let us receive Gretchen as she performs an interpretive dance based on sections of the poem Still I Rise by Maya Angelou. Gretchen, thank you very much. That was very moving and meaningful. Thank you, audience. See you next time.